Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and welcome if you're new. I hope you're all doing well, and welcome back to my August wrap-up. Guys, I didn't do great. I hit a major reading slump, of which I am still in said reading slump, and I actually cannot believe it because I thought I was gonna really excel in my August TBR this month. I knew it was gonna be iffy with the books that were picked out for me in my August TBR, but I thought I was going to do better than I did. So let's run through what was on my TBR, what I actually managed to read, and some stats that go alongside those things. This is going to be a very short video because one, I didn't read too much, and two, what I did read didn't tingle my reading senses. I don't know, it didn't do it for me. So let's hop straight into it and kind of break down everything that happened in August. So the books that were actually on my TBR once I'd finished filming my August TBR video was This Time Will Be Different by Misa Shuriga, and this was for the prompt to read a book with a different spine to a front cover. Another book that was on my TBR was A Half-Baked Idea by Olivia Potts, as this was my book club pick for this month. If you didn't know, I do host a book club called Books and Me, where we read a mixture of non-fiction and fiction and contemporary romances. So if you'd like to join or you're interested, then I'll leave the announcement video down below, and you can also comment if you're interested and I can send you the Discord link, but completely up to you, completely optional. We also had The Island Home by Lou Page on my TBR for the month for the UK setting prompt. We also had The Girl with the Louding Voice on my TBR. This was for the prompt for highest rated on Goodreads. And we also had All the Lonely People by Mike Gale, which was for favourite author and iBooks book. So those were all the books that were meant to be read this month, and to be honest, I didn't do too bad. In total, in August, I read a total of 4 books across 1,764 pages, and the ratings is where it kind of dipped, because 4 books in a month isn't actually that bad. It's 1 a week, which is pretty average, to be fair. I'm just so used to reading more than that, so I feel a bit disheartened with the amount I did actually read, but 4 books is still good. It's where the ratings kind of came to play and therefore kind of got me into a reading slump, if that makes sense. So we had 1 3-star read, which isn't bad, it's just not great. We had 1 3.5-star read, 1 4-star read, and 1 did not rate whatsoever. So the books I actually managed to read this month, the first one, I did manage to read This Time Will Be Different, which is the one that got 3 stars. I enjoyed this book, but it went straight into the unhaul pile. When I just don't feel anything towards a book, but I somehow managed to get through it, it's a 3 stars, and then I just unhaul it because I can't bother to keep it on my shelves for any longer. This book basically follows our main character, CJ. Yeah, CJ, and she's always trying to live up to her mum's perfect kind of idea that her mum has in her head for her, like straight A's, has this whole life plan figured out, but CJ doesn't have any of that, and she wants to just work with her auntie in their flower shop that they've owned for generations. It was originally her grandfather's or great-grandfather's, and he got it during World War II, and then everyone with Japanese ancestry also got sent away to those internment camps, and therefore her great-grandfather or grandfather had to sell the flower shop to someone in town, and they managed to get it back after the World War had happened, but they are now constantly in debt and this business isn't doing very well, so her mum wants to sell it back to the same people who originally kind of stole it off her grandfather or great-grandfather, and it's just basically about CJ not wanting this to happen and rebelling against that. And it does hit on some interesting topics, but for me it just didn't do it for me, and I actually can't really remember much about the actual contents apart from what it says on the blurb. So yeah, I didn't love this book, but I know people absolutely rave about this book. I just think I was one of the few that didn't love this book, unfortunately. I thought after a slow start in August, I didn't really love that book. Let's go to an author that I'm gonna guaranteed have a good time with. So I picked up Libby Page's The Island Home, and I didn't love this book. Oh, this month just failed me drastically. This book basically follows 2 main characters. It's told in 2 perspectives, and one is Lorna and one is Alice. God, I'm good with my memory today. I'm great with my memory today. So they are told in 2 perspectives, and Lorna is in London. She has run away from her past. She used to grow up on the island of Kip with her brother. She hasn't spoken to her brother in like 22 years. And you get Alice's perspective, who has married her brother and still live on the island of Kip. And they don't realise that Lorna's daughter and her brother's daughter. They didn't know they existed, but they found each other through social media, and they bring the two sides of the family back together, and they go back to the island of Kip, and she kind of has to face loads of things about her past. Trigger warnings though for emotional and physical abuse in this. And yeah, I don't know, it just didn't do it for me. I love and I praise Lily Page for the way she writes characters, and the descriptions always in the two books I have read have been absolutely brilliant. But this storyline for me just didn't do it, and I can't put my finger on why I didn't love this book so much, but I am going to keep it because I think the cover is absolutely stunning, and this is a book that I somehow got 2 dust jackets for. Like, I don't know how that happened, but it did, and I think it's very unique, and therefore I want to keep it for that and for that reason only. But yeah, I enjoyed this book, but it's not something that I'm going to think back in a couple of months' time being like, yeah, that was a really good book. Do you know what I mean? So this was not in the unhaul pile, but not a great read. And then the next book I read, I was like, right, I'll go to an author where I know I'm going to love her book because I read the 2 previous books and rated really highly. And that is the final book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series by Holly Jackson, which is As Good as Dead. I really, really enjoyed this book. Finally, a book I read in August that I did really enjoy. I gave it 4 stars in the end, maybe a 4.5 if I was being really picky. But I love this book. I think it was a great wrap up to the trilogy. I obviously can't really explain too much about it because it is the last book of a trilogy. And my friend who doesn't read and isn't that active in the book community sent me a picture being like, look what I picked up today. And she obviously took a picture of As Good as Dead. And I was like, oh my God, yay, that's so exciting. Have you read the other 2? And she was like, no, do I need to? And I'm like, yeah, you kind of need to. So although each book follows a different plot line and a different storyline, they do connect, and this book goes full circle back into the first book, and therefore I think it's really crucial that you need to read the first book, especially if you want to skim over book 2, that's fine by me. It wasn't my favourite, I still enjoyed it, but I just didn't have that sort of same excitement and anticipation than I did with the first one and the third one. This book follows like the stalking side of things, and it really creeped me out, and I was reading it when I was home alone, which probably on my part wasn't the best time to read it, but I read it then anyway, and I literally had to stop reading it because it was freaking me out so much. And for that I praise Holly Jackson because I think she writes thrillers and mysteries so well. Like, she does an incredible job with how she tied everything together was just seamless, and for that, like, it was just incredible. So for that side of things I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 stars. But it took me a while to get into this one because it started not how I expected it to be, and the climax was in the middle of the book because of how she was trying to wrap up this entire trilogy and kind of leave the characters where you want them to be, because those 3 books do follow the same characters and the same group of friends, and you want them to kind of end up happy, even though this is like a mystery thriller kind of series. So because the climax was in the middle and the second half of the book took a completely different turn to what I was expecting or anticipating before going into this book, it took a bit to get used to, but I actually ended up enjoying the second half of the book a lot more than the first half. And yeah, I just really enjoyed how this trilogy wrapped up, and I highly recommend anyone check out this trilogy. I think it's a great series for anyone to read, and yeah, I just highly recommend Holly Jackson as an author, and I cannot wait to read more things that she brings out. Now she's finished this trilogy, I hope she kind of starts a new trilogy and introduces us to new stories and new characters. I think that would be amazing. So yeah, highly recommend this series as a whole. Enjoyed this book, but the first book in this series, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, is still my favourite one of the series. So finally we had a book that I enjoyed in August, yay. And then the last book I have officially finished. I am filming this on the 26th of August, so just as like some like context I guess, is that it's currently Thursday, and I don't think I'm gonna, because I am in a slump, I don't think I'm gonna read anything tonight or tomorrow. And then Saturday and Sunday I'm spending it with my family because it's my sister's birthday. And then the end of August, which is the beginning of next week, I am on a UK trip to Bath, so I won't be reading anything. So I'm just not going to start any new books because I don't see the point, and I'm one of those people where I have to finish books by the end of the month. It's just something to do with my like mental being. I don't know. I have to have books finished by the end of the month and start fresh with new books when the new month starts. So there's no point me starting books now because I just know I'm not going to have time to finish any. So no new books are going to get started because 1, I'm in a slump, so I can't bother to read, and 2, it just doesn't make sense for what I've got going for the rest of the month and just the way I need to finish books by the end of the month. That was a ramble. So the last book I officially finished in August is A Half-Baked Idea by Olivia Potts, and spoiler alert, this has gone straight into the unhaul pile as well. This was the non-fiction pick for my book club this month. We do fiction, non-fiction, fiction, non-fiction, alternate months. So this was a non-fiction month and this was our first non-fiction month. And I was actually really, really excited to read this book because it basically follows Olivia Potts, because it is a memoir, as she has just lost her mother to quite a sudden turn of events. She was ill for quite some time, but her death was sudden. And you start this book with her grieving for her mother and the way that she uses cooking to relieve some of that grief and to kind of calm her down during this kind of really difficult time in her life. So she decides to, because during this time she has finished studying and officially qualified to become a criminal barrister, I want to say, and she has finished all that and she thinks this is the path that she's meant to go down. But then all of a sudden, because of her mother's death and the way that she learned to grieve through baking and cooking, because everything's so precise and she can so controlled and that's the one thing that she can focus on, she decides to quit kind of her career that she's worked 11 years for to go to culinary school and get going in baking. And I really enjoyed like the first 50 pages of this because it does go into a lot of depth about grief, and I think Olivia Potts, she wrote grief and how she experienced grief in such a relatable way that I personally could relate, because I've recently lost my granddad less than a year. He died in October last year, so still quite raw and recent. So I could relate to her in that way, and some of the things that she did while she was grieving, I could relate to that, and therefore I really enjoyed hearing her perspective of how she dealt with it personally. But then all of a sudden it turned into like a cookbook and heavily about culinary school, and I just didn't enjoy it. I didn't feel connected to her. I was selfishly thinking, other people have gone through this, what makes you so special? I feel so bad saying that out loud, but I'm like, everyone's gone through grief and found an outlet for them to express themselves during this really difficult time. You've just found baking, and I know you've gone from such a like conventional career in criminal barristering to being like a pastry chef, but I don't know, it didn't do it for me. So unfortunately I don't rate non-fictions because I don't feel fair rating people's stories on their actual own personal experiences. Oh, well, what happened to my voice? So yeah, I didn't rate this book, but it did jump straight into the unhaul pile once I finished reading it. And then I just want to quickly run through some other stats. And one of them is how many books did I DNF this month? And I want to say officially 1, and then I've tried reading 2 and obviously haven't got my teeth into it. So the book that was officially on my TBR that I didn't get around to and have DNF'd is All the Lonely People by Mike Gale. I'm so sad. I'm so sad. This is an official DNF because I got 180 pages in and I just couldn't vibe with it. I don't know whether it's because I've never read a Mike Gale book on ebook form before and I just want all his books physically to hold, or whether it was literally the format of the book, because I don't mind dual perspectives, but not when it goes from present day all the way back to like 1950s. I don't like historical fiction, and I know it's different in that context because you were finding out about Hubert's past and how he came to be and where he is now. But I don't know, it just didn't do it for me, and it was putting me into a slump, so I just had to get rid of it. And unfortunately, it pulled me so much into a slump that I haven't got out of that slump yet, and it's annoying me. It's annoying me so much. So I was like, okay, fine, leave it for a bit. And then I read this. This was the next book I finished after DNFing All the Lonely People. And then once I'd finished that, I was like, because this one wasn't that good either, I was like slogging my way through this. So I was just like, okay, I'm really feeling slumpish. Let's try and take it easy. Let's not read for a couple of days and then try and get into something nearer the end of the week. And unfortunately, that was not the case. I have read 10 pages of Rise to the Sun by Leah Johnson. I really wanted to read this, but I'm in a slump and I can't help it. And then also I was like, well, you know what book series do get me out of slumps? And the last 2 slumps I've been in, I've read a book in this series and it has got me out of that slump. And that is the I Heart series by Lindsay Kelk. So when I first got into a slump this year, I reread I Heart New York, which is the first book. And then when I got into another slump in like May time, I was like, okay, then I'll read I Heart Hollywood. And I got out of a slump. So I was like, well, I'm in a slump, I'll just read the next book, I Heart Paris. And I've read a chapter and I cannot be bothered to read. So there's that. So 1 official DNF, but kind of 2 more DNFs because I started both of those books. I just will not be finishing them yet. I want to still read them, obviously, but just they won't happen in August. So quickly, 3 questions: best book, worst book, and most surprising book of the month. Best book has to go to As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. The worst book has to go to A Half-Baked Idea by Olivia Potts. And most surprising, I just don't think I've read enough books this month to have a most surprising, but if I had to say one, it would be As Good as Dead, because it wasn't where I thought the story was going to go, but I was so surprised with how the ending happened and what happened in the latter half of the book that it really surprised me in a really good way, and I ended up really, really enjoying it. So that's my August wrap up. 4 official books finished, kind of 3 DNFs, really rough time, but that's okay because it's bound to happen, and 4 books is still good. So let me know what you read in August. Did you read As Good as Dead? Because obviously it came out in August, so let me know what your thoughts are. If you hopped onto the hype train and read As Good as Dead on the month of release, let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a massive thumbs up, subscribe down below to see future content from me. I do anything from weekly reading vlogs, themed reading vlogs, fun, wacky wrap-ups. This one was a little bit less wacky, but I do some really cool wrap-ups. Fun TBR games, challenge videos with my boyfriend. I have every kind, is that a spider? No. I have every kind of bookish video your heart could desire on this channel, so make sure you're subscribed so you never miss any more future uploads. And without further ado, I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.